I stand in the executive conference room, placing my security badge on the polished mahogany table. Across from me sits Amanda Wellington, the CEO's daughter-in-law, smirking with cold satisfaction. You have exactly 5 minutes before your precious claim system crashes and burns, I say, my voice steady, despite 15 years of loyalty crumbling around me. Tell your reinsurers, tell Daddy Wellington, tell everyone that Christian Parker just walked away. No claims processing, no payments, no coverage verification. Your company dies in 5 minutes. I turn toward the door, leaving chaos behind. 3 months earlier, I arrived at Wellington Insurance Group headquarters on what seemed like another typical Tuesday morning. The parking garage was nearly empty at 6 a.m., just how I liked it. No crowds, no small talk, just me and the quiet hum of servers waiting 3 floors above. My name is Christian Parker, and I'm 32 years old. For the past 15 years, I've been the senior systems architect who built and maintains the entire claims processing infrastructure for this company. Every morning starts the same way elevator to the 14th floor coffee, from the machine, by the break room, then straight to my workstation to check overnight system logs. 12 million policyholders across 48 states depend on what I built. Car accidents at 3 in the morning, house fires during weekend storms, medical emergencies that can't wait for business hours. My system processes it all, seamlessly, automatically, without fail. I've spent more nights in this office than in my own apartment, more weekends debugging code than visiting family. 15 years ago, I walked through these same glass doors as a junior programmer, fresh from State University, with a computer science degree and student loans that kept me awake at night. Wellington Insurance was smaller than maybe 3 million policyholders, and their legacy system was held together with digital duct tape and prayers. I remember my first week when their mainframe crashed during a thunderstorm season. Claims backed up for 4 days. Adjusters couldn't access policy information. Medical providers couldn't verify coverage for accident victims. The company nearly lost their license in 2 states. Jack Morrison, the head of IT who hired me, pulled me aside after that disaster. Christian, we need someone who can rebuild this from the ground up. Someone who understands that insurance isn't just about money. It's about people who need help when everything falls apart. I worked 16-hour days for 3 years straight, learning every aspect of insurance processing, understanding how claims flow from initial report through investigation approval and payment. I studied federal regulations, state compliance requirements, fraud detection algorithms, and integration protocols with hospitals, auto repair shops, law firms, and reinsurance companies. My personal life became a casualty of that dedication. I missed my sister's wedding because the system needed emergency maintenance. I canceled Christmas plans when a coding error threatened January renewals. I broke up with my college boyfriend when he complained that I cared more about servers than our relationship. He wasn't wrong. But I built something extraordinary. A system so robust, so carefully designed, that it's never crashed once in the past 12 years. Zero downtime during Hurricane Sandy, the Nashville floods, the California wildfires, or the Texas freeze. While other insurance companies struggled with outages and delays, Wellington processed claims without interruption. That Tuesday morning, I noticed something unusual in the user access logs. Someone with administrative privileges had been accessing my code repositories at 2:30 in the morning over the weekend. The timestamp showed multiple file downloads, including my system architecture documentation and database schemas. I pulled up the user account details and felt my stomach drop. Amanda Wellington had been granted complete system access 3 weeks ago. Amanda Wellington, who married the CEO's son 2 years back and had zero technical background. Amanda Wellington, whose previous experience was in marketing cosmetics at department stores. I walked down the hallway to Jack's office, my heart racing. Jack Morrison had hired me, mentored me, and protected my projects from corporate interference for 15 years. If anyone would have answers, it would be him. Jack, we need to talk about Amanda Wellington's system access. He looked up from his monitor and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Fear. Jack Morrison, who'd stood up to executives and board members to defend our IT budget, was afraid. Christian, close the door and sit down. I knew this wasn't going to be good news. Amanda convinced her father-in-law to give her what she calls a digital transformation oversight role. She's been meeting with external consultants, telling them that our systems are outdated and inefficient. She's building a case that we need complete modernization. Jack, our systems process more claims per hour than any competitor. Our uptime is better than companies with 10 times our IT budget. What modernization? It's not about performance, Christian. It's about politics. She wants to make her mark on the company, and you know what that means for people like us. I felt the first crack in the foundation of my secure world. 15 years of perfect performance, of midnight troubleshooting and weekend upgrades, might mean nothing against family connections and corporate politics. There's more, Jack continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. She's been telling people that you're difficult to work with, that your expertise makes you controlling and resistant to change. She's setting you up, Christian. The coffee in my stomach turned cold. I had dedicated my entire adult life to building something perfect, something that protected millions of people when they needed help most. And now someone who couldn't write a simple script was positioning herself to tear it all down. Over the next 2 weeks, I began discreetly monitoring Amanda's system access, and what I discovered made my blood boil. She wasn't just browsing files randomly. She was systematically downloading proprietary documentation, copying database schemas, and accessing code repositories according to a carefully planned schedule. Amanda Wellington was 38 years old, a former marketing executive with a business degree from a mid-tier state college. After her divorce from a pharmaceutical sales manager, she targeted Thomas Wellington at a charity gala in downtown Nashville. Thomas, the CEO's 42-year-old son, had been vulnerable after his first wife died in a car accident, and Amanda positioned herself as exactly the kind of sophisticated companion a grieving widower needed. Within 18 months, they were married, and Amanda had moved into the Wellington family mansion in Belle Meade. Within 2 years, she'd convinced her father-in-law that she possessed keen business insights about modern technology and changing customer expectations. I traced her downloaded files and discovered she was sharing everything with an outside consulting firm called Synergy Tech Solutions. A few internet searches revealed exactly what kind of company this was. They specialized in what they called workforce optimization, which meant identifying expensive senior employees and replacing them with cheaper alternatives. The pattern was always the same. Synergy would analyze a company's operations, identify key personnel whose knowledge made them indispensable, then develop strategies to document that knowledge and transfer it to less expensive replacements. They'd done it to aerospace engineers in California, financial analysts in New York, and manufacturing supervisors in Michigan. Sarah Chen, our claims processing supervisor, stopped by my desk that Wednesday afternoon. Sarah had worked with my systems for 8 years and understood better than anyone how complex the daily operations actually were. Christian, something weird is happening with system performance reports. Amanda asked me to document every minor delay or glitch over the past 6 months. She wants timestamps, error codes, everything. I felt puzzle pieces clicking together in my mind. Sarah, have you noticed any actual performance issues? That's what's strange. The system's been running perfectly, but Amanda keeps insisting there must be problems we're not catching. She even suggested that maybe we're just used to poor performance and don't recognize it anymore. That afternoon, I dug deeper into the system logs and found something that made my hands shake with rage. Amanda had been introducing subtle errors into the code, creating minor glitches that lasted just long enough to generate error reports, then mysteriously resolve themselves. She was manufacturing evidence of system instability to support her narrative that my work was unreliable. David Kim, our junior programmer who joined the team 2 years ago, approached me nervously at the coffee machine on Thursday morning. Christian Amanda asked me to estimate how long it would take to rewrite the claims processing module using modern cloud architecture. She said it was just a theoretical exercise, but she wanted detailed timelines and cost projections. What did you tell her? I told her the truth, that our current system handles edge cases and regulatory requirements that would take years to replicate. She didn't seem happy with that answer. I knew I had to dig deeper. That evening, I stayed late and accessed Amanda's email account through the administrative privileges that came with my system architect role. What I found exceeded my worst fears. Amanda had been corresponding with Synergy Tech for 2 months, and they'd provided her with a detailed playbook for eliminating what they called entrenched technical personnel. The strategy involved questioning my social skills, suggesting that my expertise made me difficult to manage, and positioning my deep knowledge as a liability rather than an asset. But the most devastating discovery was an email thread about Jessica Taylor, Amanda's supposed college friend, who was being hired as a systems consultant at a salary $20,000 higher than mine. According to her resume, Jessica had 6 years of IT experience and expertise in modern cloud platforms. I researched Jessica Taylor and learned the truth. She'd worked for 3 years in basic technical support, answering phone calls about password resets and printer problems. Her only cloud experience was setting up email accounts for small businesses. She had no knowledge of insurance regulations, no understanding of claims processing workflows, and no experience with enterprise-level system architecture. Amanda's plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Get Jessica hired at a senior level, have me train her on basic system functions during a 2-week transition period, then terminate my employment and leave Jessica to maintain something she could never understand. When the system inevitably failed under Jessica's management, Amanda would blame my sabotage during the transition. She'd claim I deliberately withheld information or introduced bugs to make my replacement look incompetent. My reputation would be destroyed, and Amanda would position herself as the victim of my unprofessional behavior. I read through email after email, watching Amanda and her consultants plan the destruction of my career with the casual efficiency of planning a dinner party. They discussed my personality flaws, my resistance to change, and my inability to work as part of a team. Linda Rodriguez, our HR director, had been copied on many of these emails. Linda, who'd always been friendly and supportive, was apparently part of the conspiracy. She'd been documenting my interactions with colleagues, looking for evidence of difficult behavior that could justify termination. As I sat in my empty office that Thursday night reading through months of calculated manipulation, I realized this wasn't just workplace politics. This was a systematic destruction of everything I'd built, everything I'd sacrificed for, and everything I represented. Amanda Wellington wasn't just firing me. She was ensuring that I'd never be able to work in my field again, that my 15 years of expertise would be discredited and forgotten, and that she could claim credit for improving operations by removing an allegedly problematic employee. The system I'd built to help people in crisis was being used as a weapon against me by someone who couldn't understand the difference between a database and a spreadsheet. I made a decision that night. If Amanda wanted a war, she'd get one. But I wouldn't be fighting with HR policies and performance reviews. I'd be fighting with the one thing Amanda couldn't fake, couldn't steal, and couldn't replicate. I'd be fighting with the truth about what it really takes to keep 12 million people protected when everything falls apart. The next morning, I requested a meeting with Robert Wellington, the company's 68-year-old founder and CEO. If anyone could understand the business risks of Amanda's plan, it would be the man who'd built this company, from a small regional insurer into a nationwide operation. Robert Wellington's corner office occupied half of the 15th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Nashville. The walls displayed awards from industry associations, photos with governors and senators, and newspaper clippings celebrating the company's growth over 4 decades. I'd met with Robert perhaps 20 times over my career, usually during budget presentations or major system upgrades. He'd always struck me as a sharp businessman who understood that technology was the backbone of modern insurance operations. But the man who sat across from me that Friday morning seemed different. Older, more distant, less engaged with operational details than I remembered. Christian, Amanda mentioned you might have concerns about our modernization initiatives. I appreciate you coming to me directly. I presented my case methodically. I showed him system uptime statistics, processing speed comparisons with competitors, and cost analyses, demonstrating how my architecture saved the company millions annually in licensing fees and maintenance contracts. Mr. Wellington, our system processes claims faster and more accurately than any competitor. We've handled every major disaster without interruption, while other companies struggled with outages. Replacing this infrastructure would cost tens of millions and introduce risks that could threaten our licenses in multiple states. Robert listened politely, occasionally nodding, but I could sense his mind was elsewhere. Christian, I appreciate your dedication, but Amanda has raised valid points about the need for fresh perspectives. The insurance industry is changing rapidly, and we can't afford to fall behind because we're too attached to legacy systems. Sir, with respect, these aren't legacy systems. I've updated and modernized every component over the past 5 years. We're using current technologies integrated with proven processes that ensure regulatory compliance and operational stability. That may be true, but Amanda has convinced me that we need someone with a more collaborative approach, someone who can work with external partners and embrace modern methodologies. I felt my heart sink as I realized Robert wasn't evaluating technical merits. He was repeating Amanda's talking points about collaboration and modernization without understanding what those words meant in our context. Mr. Wellington, has anyone explained what happens if the system fails? The regulatory consequences, the customer impact, the legal liability. Christian, I understand you're concerned about job security, but Jessica Taylor comes highly recommended. She'll start Monday with full system access and will expect you to provide comprehensive training over the next 2 weeks. After that, we'll offer you a generous severance package to ease your transition. The casual dismissal hit me like a physical blow. 15 years of perfect performance reduced to job security concerns. My expertise characterized as reluctance to embrace change. Sir, what specific problems has Amanda identified with current operations? She's documented several performance issues and concerns about single points of failure. Our board agrees that relying too heavily on one person's knowledge creates unnecessary risk. I wanted to laugh at the irony. The board was concerned about single points of failure, so they were planning to replace someone with deep system knowledge with someone who had none. Mr. Wellington, may I ask what Jessica's specific qualifications are for maintaining an enterprise insurance processing system? Robert's expression hardened. Christian, I've made my decision. You can either cooperate with the transition, or we can discuss immediate termination without severance. I realized that any further technical arguments would be useless. Amanda had spent months poisoning this conversation before it ever happened. Over the weekend, I consulted with Mark Stevens, an employment attorney who specialized in technology sector disputes. Mark's office was in a converted warehouse in the Gulch, and his casual demeanor masked sharp legal instincts. Christian, based on what you've told me, you may have grounds for both wrongful termination and defamation claims. If Amanda has been falsifying performance issues and sharing your proprietary work with outside consultants, that could constitute fraud. What are my options? Legally, you can fight this. But practically, you need to consider whether you want to spend 2 years in litigation against a company with deep pockets and family connections to half the political establishment in Tennessee. What do you recommend? Document everything. Save all your work, keep records of your contributions, and prepare for the possibility that they'll blame you when things go wrong. That Sunday evening, I worked late in my apartment, creating detailed documentation of system architecture, maintenance procedures, and securities protocols. I exported years of code comments, system logs, and performance data to personal storage devices. I also researched Jessica Taylor more thoroughly and discovered something that made my stomach churn. Jessica wasn't just Amanda's college friend. Public records showed they'd attended the same high school in Memphis, the same college sorority, and Jessica had been maid of honor at Amanda's wedding to Thomas. This wasn't about hiring qualified personnel. This was about installing a loyal ally who would never question Amanda's authority or expertise. Monday morning, I arrived at the office to find Jessica Taylor setting up in the cubicle next to mine. She was 29 years old, professionally dressed, and enthusiastically grateful for the opportunity to work with such sophisticated technology. Christian, I'm so excited to learn from someone with your experience. Amanda told me you've built something really impressive here. Jessica seemed genuinely nice, which made everything worse. She was a pawn in Amanda's game, probably unaware of how far over her head she was about to be. Jessica, this system processes 12 million policies across 48 states. Every line of code has to comply with federal regulations and state insurance laws. A single error can trigger regulatory investigations that could shut down the company. I understand it's complicated, but I'm a quick learner. Amanda said you'd provide comprehensive documentation to help with the transition. Over the next week, I attempted to explain 15 years of accumulated knowledge to someone whose most complex technical experience had been configuring email servers. Jessica took detailed notes, asked thoughtful questions, and clearly tried her best to understand concepts that would take months to master. But I also noticed Amanda monitoring our training sessions, taking notes about my explanations, and asking detailed questions about system vulnerabilities and administrative access procedures. Thursday afternoon, Amanda cornered me in the break room while Jessica was at lunch. Christian, I hope you understand that this transition is best for everyone. You've done excellent work, but the company needs leadership that can embrace change and work collaboratively with modern business practices. Amanda, what specific changes are you planning to implement? We're exploring cloud-based solutions that will reduce costs and improve scalability. Synergy Tech has identified several opportunities for optimization. Have they provided specifics about regulatory compliance during migration? That's exactly the kind of technical fear-mongering that's holding this company back. Modern solutions handle compliance automatically. I stared at this woman who was casually discussing the destruction of a system she didn't understand to solve problems that didn't exist. Amanda, when Jessica encounters her first major system failure, what's the escalation procedure? She'll have vendor support and consulting resources. We don't need to depend on one person's tribal knowledge anymore. And when the state insurance commissioner asks why our compliance reporting failed, Christian, this conversation is exactly why we need fresh perspectives. You're so invested in the old ways of doing things that you can't see the benefits of modernization. That Thursday evening, I received a call from Patricia Wong, my neighbor, and one of my few close friends outside work. Patricia was a financial advisor who understood corporate politics better than most. Christian, you've been talking about this situation for weeks, and I'm worried you're not seeing the big picture. What do you mean? This isn't really about technology or performance. This woman is positioning herself as a change agent who can improve operations by removing expensive personnel. Your firing isn't the end goal, it's the proof of concept. Proof of concept for what? Think about it. If she can successfully eliminate the most technically competent person in the company and replace her with someone cheaper, what message does that send to every other senior employee? Patricia was right. Amanda wasn't just targeting me. She was establishing a precedent that expertise and experience were less valuable than loyalty and cost control. Friday morning, I learned that Amanda had been preparing for months. Thomas Wellington sent an email to all department heads announcing organizational restructuring to improve efficiency and embrace modern best practices. My termination was positioned as part of a broader strategy to reduce operational complexity and foster collaboration. The political groundwork was complete. Amanda had convinced her husband, her father-in-law, and the board that removing me was a smart business decision. She'd prepared Jessica as my replacement, arranged vendor support for basic issues, and created a narrative that would protect her if anything went wrong. But she'd made one critical miscalculation. She'd assumed that my system could be maintained by anyone with basic technical training and vendor support. She'd underestimated the complexity of what I'd built and the depth of knowledge required to maintain it. I spent that weekend creating my final preparations, not just documentation and backups, but strategic decisions about what would happen when I was no longer there to prevent disasters that Amanda couldn't imagine. Monday morning arrived with thunderstorms rolling across central Tennessee, and I couldn't help but think about all the weather-related claims that would be processed automatically by systems I'd designed to handle exactly this kind of challenge. At 10 a.m., Linda Rodriguez from HR called to schedule my termination meeting for 2 that afternoon. Her voice was carefully neutral professional and completely devoid of the warmth she'd shown me for years. I used the morning to complete my final system maintenance tasks, ensuring that everything was perfectly optimized for what was about to happen. Every log file organized, every backup verified, every security protocol active, and waiting for my personal authorization codes. At exactly 2 p.m., I walked into the executive conference room, where Amanda Wellington sat at the head of a polished mahogany table. Thomas Wellington sat to her right, avoiding eye contact and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Linda Rodriguez sat across from them with a folder of paperwork and the uncomfortable expression of someone following orders she didn't entirely support. "Christian, please take a seat. We'll keep this brief and professional." Amanda's voice carried the cold efficiency of someone who'd been planning this moment for months. She wore a navy business suit and pearl earrings, projecting the image of corporate authority despite having zero qualifications for the decisions she was making. Due to organizational restructuring and evolving business requirements, Wellington Insurance has decided to eliminate your position effective immediately. We're prepared to offer you a generous severance package contingent on your signature on these documents. She slid a folder across the table containing termination papers, non-disclosure agreements, and non-compete clauses that would prevent me from working in insurance technology for 3 years. The severance includes 6 months of salary continuation and health insurance coverage provided you agree to the terms outlined in Section 3. I flipped through the legal documents, noting clauses about protecting proprietary information and maintaining professional conduct during transition periods. The language was clearly designed to prevent me from discussing what was happening or helping competitors understand my system architecture. "Amanda, may I ask what specific performance issues led to this decision?" "Christian, this isn't about performance. It's about strategic direction and organizational efficiency. We need personnel who can embrace change and work collaboratively with external partners." "Can you provide examples of situations where I failed to collaborate or embrace change?" Thomas Wellington finally spoke, his voice lacking conviction. "Christian, we appreciate your contributions over the years, but we need to move in a different direction." "Thomas, what direction specifically? What problems are you solving by eliminating the person who maintains your critical systems?" Amanda's mask slipped slightly, revealing the irritation beneath her professional demeanor. "Christian, this is exactly the kind of defensive attitude that makes change difficult. Instead of questioning decisions, you should be focusing on how to make this transition successful." "I'm asking legitimate business questions about operational continuity and risk management. And I'm telling you that those concerns have been addressed through modern solutions and qualified personnel." I looked at these people who were casually destroying my career and potentially putting millions of policyholders at risk and felt something shift inside me. The fear and hurt I'd been carrying for weeks transformed into cold, calculated anger. Amanda explained to me how Jessica's qualifications match the requirements for maintaining an enterprise insurance processing system. Jessica brings fresh perspectives and modern technical expertise that complement our new strategic direction. "What specific technical expertise?" "She has extensive experience with cloud platforms and modern development methodologies." "Have you reviewed the regulatory compliance requirements for insurance data processing?" Those requirements are handled automatically by modern systems." I realized that Amanda genuinely believed the nonsense she was spouting. She'd convinced herself that complex problems could be solved with simple solutions, that expertise was just a matter of reading documentation, and that 15 years of accumulated knowledge could be replaced with vendor support contracts. Amanda, when the system fails next weekend during the thunderstorm season, what's the escalation and procedure? It won't fail. Modern systems have built-in redundancy and automatic failover capabilities. And when the state insurance commissioners ask why claim processing stopped for 3 days, Christian, this kind of technical fear-mongering is exactly why we need to make this change. You're so invested in maintaining the status quo that you can't see the benefits of modernization. I looked around the table at these people who were making decisions based on PowerPoint presentations and consultant promises and made my choice. I'd like to understand the timeline for this transition. You'll provide Jessica with complete documentation over the next 2 weeks, then your employment terminates with full severance benefits. And my administrative access to the system that will be transferred to Jessica immediately to ensure continuity. I need my personal items from my office. Of course, security will escort you to collect your belongings after this meeting. Amanda's confidence was absolute. She'd planned this, perfectly anticipated my questions, and prepared responses that positioned her as a forward-thinking leader, making difficult but necessary decisions. But she'd made one fatal assumption. She'd assumed I would cooperate with my own professional destruction to avoid making waves. I stood up slowly and placed my security badge on the polished table between us. Amanda, I have spent 15 years building a system that processes claims for 12 million people across 48 states. I've prevented failures during hurricanes, floods, ice storms, and wildfires. I've maintained perfect uptime through system upgrades, regulatory changes, and 3 economic recessions. Christian, we appreciate your service, but I'm not finished. The system doesn't run automatically. It requires daily oversight, manual intervention, and deep knowledge of insurance business processes. Every night, I execute maintenance scripts that prevent data corruption. Every morning, I verify integration with hundreds of external systems. Every weekend, I monitor performance during peak processing periods. Thomas Wellington looked confused. Jessica will handle those responsibilities. Jessica doesn't know what those responsibilities are. She doesn't understand the difference between a claims adjuster and a reinsurance coordinator. She's never seen federal compliance reporting requirements or state audit procedures. Amanda's voice hardened. This is exactly the kind of negativity and resistance to change that makes this decision necessary. You want to fire me to make room for your college friend who can't maintain what I've built. You want to take credit for improving operations by destroying something that actually works. You want to position yourself as a change agent by breaking systems you don't understand. Christian, you're proving my point about your attitude and inability to work collaboratively. I picked up my security badge and looked Amanda Wellington directly in the eyes. You have exactly 5 minutes before the system starts failing in ways you can't imagine and Jessica can't fix. I'm the only person who understands how everything fits together, and I'm the only person with the authorization codes that keep critical processes running. You're being dramatic, Christian. Modern systems don't depend on individual knowledge. Tell that to the car accident victims who can't get their medical bills paid. Tell that to the hurricane evacuees who can't file claims for destroyed homes. Tell that to the businesses that can't verify coverage for workers' compensation. Christian, if you're threatening to sabotage our systems, I'm not threatening anything. I'm explaining what happens when you fire the person who keeps 12 million people protected and replace her with someone who's never seen an insurance claim in her life. Amanda's confidence wavered for the first time. The system will continue operating normally. Will it when the overnight maintenance scripts fail? Because Jessica doesn't have my authorization codes, when the integration with medical providers breaks because she doesn't understand the authentication protocols, when the fraud detection algorithms stop updating because she doesn't know the database relationships. Thomas Wellington looked genuinely concerned. Amanda, maybe we should delay this transition until... No delays. Christian is being terminated today as planned. I placed my badge on the table and walked toward the door. You have 5 minutes before your claims processing stops completely. Tell your reinsurers, tell the state commissioners, tell Daddy Wellington that Christian Parker just walked away from 15 years of perfect system uptime. Christian, you can't just leave. I stopped at the door and turned back one final time. Amanda, you spent months convincing everyone that my expertise was a liability and my knowledge was unnecessary. Congratulations. You're about to find out exactly how right you were. I walked through the Wellington insurance lobby for what I knew would be the last time, past the marble walls, displaying awards for customer service excellence and operational efficiency. The security guard, who'd greeted me every morning for 15 years, looked confused as I handed him my building access card. Leaving early today, Christian. Something like that, Tom. Take care of yourself. I drove home to my apartment in Green Hills, knowing that my phone would start ringing within minutes. I'd built multiple layers of security into the system, not to make life difficult, but to ensure that critical insurance operations couldn't be disrupted by unauthorized access or incompetent management. Every essential process required my personal authorization codes, updated daily, through algorithms that only I understood. Overnight maintenance scripts that prevented database corruption needed manual approval before executing. Integration with external medical providers, auto repair networks, and legal firms depended on authentication protocols that reset automatically if I didn't verify them every 12 hours. At exactly 3:15 p.m., my phone buzzed with a call from Jack Morrison. Christian, what the hell is happening? Half the system just went into maintenance mode and Jessica doesn't know how to authorize the recovery processes. Jack, I told Amanda exactly what would happen. The system requires daily oversight from someone who understands insurance operations. Can you walk Jessica through the authorization procedures? Jessica doesn't know the difference between a property claim and a casualty claim. She's never seen a reinsurance contract or a state compliance report. Walking her through authorization procedures would be like teaching someone to perform surgery by reading them medical textbook chapters over the phone. Christian, please, we've got claims adjusters calling because they can't access policy information for active cases. I warned them this would happen. I explained the risks. Amanda decided that vendor support and Jessica's enthusiasm were adequate substitutes for 15 years of experience. At 3:30, Sarah Chen called in panic. Christian, the claims processing queue is backing up. New submissions aren't being routed to adjusters and existing cases can't be updated. I've got medical providers calling because they can't verify coverage for emergency procedures. Sarah, the system is working exactly as designed. It's shutting down non-essential functions to prevent data corruption when proper oversight isn't available. Can you restore access remotely? Sarah, I don't work for Wellington Insurance anymore. They fired me an hour ago. They fired you in the middle of storm season with claims volume at seasonal peaks. Ask Amanda Wellington. She'll explain how modern cloud solutions handle everything automatically. By 4 p.m., the cascade failures were accelerating. Authentication systems that I'd programmed to require daily verification began logging out users across the company. Backup processes that normally ran automatically went into manual mode, waiting for oversight that would never come. Jessica Taylor called at 4:15, her voice tight with stress. Christian, I'm trying to follow the documentation you provided, but the system keeps asking for authorization codes that aren't in any of the manuals. Jessica, those codes are generated by algorithms based on system status, external integrations, and compliance requirements. They're not written down anywhere because they change every day. How am I supposed to get them? You'd need to understand the business logic behind claims processing, the regulatory environment for insurance operations, and the technical architecture of enterprise database systems. Can you just give me today's codes to get things running? Jessica, even if I wanted to help, giving you authorization codes without proper understanding would be like handing someone the keys to a nuclear reactor. One wrong command could corrupt 12 million policy records. At 5 p.m., Linda Rodriguez called from HR. Christian, we need you to return to the office immediately to assist with system recovery procedures. Linda, I don't work there anymore. You terminated my employment 3 hours ago. This is an emergency situation. We can discuss reinstating your position. Amanda made it very clear that my services were no longer needed and that Jessica was fully qualified to maintain all system functions. Christian, please be reasonable. We can work something out. Linda, I've been reasonable for 15 years. I built a perfect system, maintained perfect uptime, and provided detailed warnings about the consequences of my termination. Amanda decided those warnings were fear-mongering. By 6 p.m., the external impacts were becoming visible. Auto repair shops couldn't verify coverage for accident repairs. Medical providers couldn't confirm insurance for emergency room visits. Law firms handling injury cases couldn't access policy information for active lawsuits. Mark Stevens, my attorney, called at 6:30. Christian, I've been researching employment law around essential personnel and business continuity. If Wellington's system failures cause regulatory violations or customer harm, they can't blame you for consequences they were warned about. Mark, what about their claims that I sabotaged the system? Based on your documentation, you built security features to prevent unauthorized access and data corruption. Calling that sabotage would be like blaming a bank vault manufacturer when thieves can't open the safe. At 7 p.m., I received a call from an unknown number. Christian Parker. This is Commissioner Janet Walsh from the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance. We've received reports of system failures at Wellington Insurance that may constitute compliance violations. My heart raced. State insurance commissioners had the authority to suspend licenses, impose fines, and shut down operations for companies that couldn't meet their obligations to policyholders. Commissioner Walsh, I'm a former employee. You'd need to speak with current management about operational issues. Ms. Parker, our records show you as the primary systems architect for Wellington's claims processing infrastructure. We need to understand the scope and duration of current failures. Commissioner, I was terminated from my position this afternoon. Current management assured me that they had adequate resources to maintain all system functions. Do you have concerns about their ability to restore normal operations? I paused, knowing that my answer could determine whether Wellington Insurance survived the next week. Commissioner, I believe you should speak directly with Amanda Wellington, who's leading their modernization efforts, and Jessica Taylor, who's assumed responsibility for system maintenance. Thank you, Ms. Parker. We'll be conducting a formal investigation starting tomorrow morning. At 8 p.m., Thomas Wellington called personally. Christian, I think there may have been some miscommunication about the scope of your responsibilities and the timeline for transition. Thomas, there was no miscommunication. Amanda made it clear that my services were no longer needed and that Jessica was fully qualified to handle all technical requirements. Perhaps we moved too quickly. Could you consider returning to help stabilize operations while we develop a more gradual transition plan? Thomas, 3 hours ago, your wife told me that my expertise was unnecessary and my concerns were fear-mongering. Has something changed? Christian, please, we can discuss compensation adjustments and additional resources. Thomas, I spent 15 years building something perfect, and your wife destroyed it in one afternoon because she wanted to prove she could make tough decisions. You chose to support her judgment over mine. What would it take to get you to reconsider? I looked out my apartment window at the storm clouds building over Nashville, knowing that tonight would bring the kind of severe weather that generated thousands of insurance claims across the region. Thomas, you'd have to admit that Amanda made a catastrophic mistake based on complete ignorance of insurance operations. You'd have to acknowledge that firing me was reckless and irresponsible, and you'd have to guarantee that this kind of political manipulation could never happen again. I'll discuss those terms with Amanda. Thomas, Amanda won't accept those terms because they'd expose her incompetence and end her career at Wellington. She'd rather see the company fail than admit she was wrong. By 9 p.m. that Monday evening, I knew that the real crisis was just beginning. Tomorrow would bring the regulatory investigation media attention and cascading failures that would reveal the true cost of replacing expertise with politics. Amanda Wellington had wanted to prove that modern solutions could replace experienced personnel. She was about to get a very expensive education in the difference between PowerPoint presentations and operational reality. Tuesday morning brought the kind of severe thunderstorms that I'd prepared for during 15 years of system maintenance. As I drank coffee in my apartment and watched weather radar on my laptop, I knew that Wellington Insurance was facing their first major test since my departure. My phone started ringing at 7 a.m. with increasingly desperate calls from company executives, but I let them go to voicemail. I had an appointment with Mark Stevens and his colleague, Rebecca Nash, an employment law specialist who'd agreed to review my case. Rebecca's law office occupied 2 floors of a converted warehouse in the Gulch, and her reputation for handling technology sector disputes was legendary among Nashville's professional community. Christian, based on your documentation, you have strong grounds for wrongful termination, defamation, and possibly fraud claims. Amanda's systematic manipulation of performance records and sharing of proprietary information with outside consultants constitute clear violations of employment law. What kind of timeline are we looking at? Normally, employment litigation takes 18 to 24 months, but your situation is unusual because the consequences of Wellington's decision are becoming visible immediately. What do you mean? When companies make bad personnel decisions, it usually takes months or years for the problems to surface. Your case is different because the system failures create immediate measurable damages that can be traced directly to their decision to terminate you. Mark Stevens pulled out his laptop and showed me several news articles that had appeared online overnight. The story's already getting media attention. Major Nashville insurer faces system outages during storm season. Technology failures prevent claim processing for thousands of customers. The business community is paying attention. Mark, what's our strategy? We document everything, cooperate with regulatory investigations, and position you as a whistleblower who tried to prevent this disaster rather than a disgruntled employee seeking revenge. That afternoon, I received a call from Michael Torres, an investigative journalist who covered Tennessee business and politics for the Nashville scene. Ms. Parker, I'm researching the situation at Wellington Insurance, and several sources have suggested you might have insights into the causes of their current operational problems. Mr. Torres, I'd be happy to discuss my experience, but I should mention that I'm represented by counsel. I understand. Would you be willing to participate in an on-the-record interview about your time at Wellington and your concerns about their recent management decisions? After consulting with my attorneys, I agreed to meet with Torres at a coffee shop in East Nashville. For 2 hours, I explained the technical realities behind the crisis, providing documentation that proved my warnings were accurate and Amanda's promises were impossible to fulfill. Ms. Parker, based on your documentation, it appears that Amanda Wellington systematically misrepresented both the stability of current operations and the qualifications of your proposed replacement. Mr. Torres, I warned them exactly what would happen. I provided detailed explanations of system dependencies, maintenance requirements, and operational risks. Amanda dismissed those warnings as resistance to change. Do you believe she understood the technical implications of her decisions? I believe Amanda convinced herself that complex problems could be solved with simple solutions, that expertise was just a matter of reading documentation, and that vendor support could substitute for 15 years of accumulated knowledge. What do you think motivated her approach? Amanda needed to prove she could make tough decisions and improve operations. Eliminating an expensive senior employee while claiming to modernize systems made her look like an effective change agent to people who don't understand technology. Ms. Parker, are you aware that this isn't the first time Amanda Wellington has been involved in similar personnel decisions? That question caught my attention. What do you mean? Public records show that Amanda's previous employer, Lux Cosmetics in Memphis, experienced significant operational disruptions after she led a workforce optimization initiative that eliminated several senior staff members. Torres showed me newspaper clippings from Memphis business publications describing how Lux Cosmetics had struggled with inventory management and customer service problems after Amanda's restructuring efforts. Mr. Torres, are you suggesting this is a pattern? I'm suggesting that Amanda Wellington has a history of identifying expensive personnel as problems to be solved, rather than assets to be managed. That evening, I researched Amanda's background more thoroughly and discovered that Torres was understating the pattern. At Lux Cosmetics, she'd eliminated 3 senior managers responsible for supply chain operations, replacing them with junior staff and external consultants. Within 6 months, the company faced warehouse backlogs, delivery delays, and customer complaints that eventually led to a buyout by a larger competitor. Before Lux Cosmetics, Amanda had worked briefly at a regional banking chain, where she'd led a customer service optimization project that eliminated experienced branch managers in favor of centralized call center operations. That bank had later faced regulatory sanctions for inadequate customer service during loan processing. Wednesday morning brought devastating news for Wellington Insurance. Commissioner Janet Walsh announced that the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance was launching a formal investigation into the company's operational capabilities and regulatory compliance. The press release was damning. Recent system failures have prevented timely processing of insurance claims, potentially violating state requirements for prompt payment and customer service. The investigation will determine whether Wellington Insurance possesses adequate operational capacity to fulfill its obligations to Tennessee policyholders. Thomas Wellington called me personally that afternoon, his voice strained with stress. Christian, the state is threatening to suspend our license if we can't demonstrate stable operations within 48 hours. Jessica can't restore full functionality, and our vendor support contracts aren't adequate for enterprise-level problems. Thomas, I warned you this would happen. I know. Amanda assured me that the transition would be seamless. What would it take to get you to come back? Thomas, coming back now would make me responsible for fixing problems I didn't create while protecting people who destroyed my career. Why would I do that? Oh, we could offer significant compensation increases, equity participation, whatever you think is fair. Thomas, the problem isn't compensation. The problem is that Amanda made catastrophic decisions based on complete ignorance, and your family chose to support her judgment over mine. Christian, please, we're facing potential bankruptcy if we lose our license. Thomas, you chose to fire the person who prevented that outcome for 15 years. You can't undo that decision by offering money. By Thursday, the crisis had attracted attention from insurance industry publications and financial news outlets. Wellington Insurance stock price dropped 15% in 3 days. Major corporate clients began questioning whether their policies would be honored if the company couldn't process claims reliably. Reinsurance companies that shared risk on Wellington's largest policies demanded explanations and threatened to modify contract terms that would increase Wellington's costs significantly. Lloyd's of London issued a statement expressing concerns about operational continuity that sent shockwaves through the company's executive leadership. But the most devastating blow came Thursday evening when Michael Torres published his investigative article in the Nashville Scene. The headline read, "How Family Politics Nearly Destroyed a Major Insurance Company." The article detailed Amanda's pattern of targeting experienced personnel, her complete lack of technical qualifications, and the systematic manipulation that led to my termination. Torres had interviewed former employees from Amanda's previous companies, all of whom described similar experiences, with competent senior staff being eliminated in favor of cheaper, less qualified alternatives. The article also revealed financial details about Jessica Taylor's compensation and her actual qualifications, creating a narrative that Wellington Insurance had paid more money for dramatically less expertise. But Torres had uncovered something even more damaging. Through public records and corporate filings, he discovered that Amanda and Jessica weren't just college friends. They were cousins, and both women had been involved in similar schemes at other companies, where they'd systematically eliminated senior staff while installing family members in high-paying positions. Amanda Wellington wasn't just incompetent. She was running a deliberate fraud designed to enrich herself and her relatives at the expense of companies and employees who trusted them. Friday morning, I received a call from the FBI's white-collar crime division. Special Agent Sarah Mitchell wanted to discuss potential fraud allegations related to Amanda's activities at multiple companies. Miss Parker, we're investigating a pattern of employment fraud involving the systematic elimination of qualified personnel and their replacement with unqualified relatives or associates. Your case appears to be part of a larger scheme. My decision to walk away from Wellington Insurance had exposed something much bigger than workplace politics or poor management decisions. I'd uncovered a criminal enterprise that had been operating for years, and Amanda Wellington was about to face consequences she'd never imagined. 2 weeks after walking out of Wellington Insurance, I sat in the green room of Nashville's WTVF television studio, preparing for an interview that would be broadcast on the 6 o'clock business news segment. The past 14 days had transformed my life in ways I'd never imagined possible. Michael Torres's investigative article had triggered a cascade of revelations about Amanda Wellington's fraudulent activities across multiple companies. The FBI had uncovered evidence of systematic insurance fraud, employment law violations, and conspiracy charges involving Amanda Jessica and several accomplices at previous companies. Amanda Wellington was arrested Wednesday morning on charges of wire fraud conspiracy and violations of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. The indictment detailed a 3-year scheme involving 4 companies where she'd used her positions to eliminate qualified employees while installing relatives and associates in overpaid positions. Jessica Taylor had fled Tennessee immediately after Amanda's arrest, but federal authorities tracked her to a hotel in Phoenix where she was attempting to establish a new identity. Both women now face decades in federal prison, if convicted on all charges. But the most satisfying development was the complete vindication of my warnings about system failures and operational risks. The Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance had released a preliminary report confirming that Wellington's crisis resulted directly from the irresponsible elimination of essential technical personnel without adequate succession planning or competency verification. As I sat in the television studio makeup chair, I reflected on how the past 2 weeks had changed everything. My phone hadn't stopped ringing with job offers from insurance companies, technology firms, and consulting groups who recognized the value of someone with proven expertise and the courage to stand up for professional standards. The interview went better than I'd hoped. The reporter Janet Morrison understood the technical issues and asked thoughtful questions about system architecture, business continuity, and the importance of protecting institutional knowledge in technology-dependent industries. Miss Parker, what do you think the broader business community should learn from this situation? Janet, competence matters more than politics. When companies prioritize personal relationships over professional qualifications, they put customers, employees, and shareholders at risk. Expertise isn't just nice to have, it's essential for operations that people depend on. What's next for you professionally? I've accepted a position as Chief Technology Officer with Meridian Insurance, Wellington's largest competitor. They've given me complete authority over system architecture and a mandate to build the most robust claims processing platform in the industry. Any advice for other technology professionals who might face similar challenges? Document everything, stand up for your professional standards, and remember that your expertise has value that can't be faked or replaced by politics. When someone tries to eliminate you for reasons that don't make technical sense, they're usually trying to cover up their own incompetence. After the television interview, I drove to Meridian Insurance's headquarters in Cool Springs, where I'd spent the past week meeting with executives and reviewing their current technology infrastructure. The contrast with Wellington couldn't have been more striking. Meridian's CEO Jennifer Walsh was a former actuary who understood that insurance was fundamentally a data business. Their chief operating officer had 20 years of claims processing experience. Their board included technology experts who asked detailed questions about system architecture and business continuity planning. Christian, we want you to build something extraordinary here. No budget constraints, no political interference, complete authority over technical decisions. Our only requirement is that you create the most reliable and efficient claims processing operation in the country. Over the past month, I'd also established the Parker Foundation for Technology Education, using my legal settlement with Wellington Insurance to create scholarship programs for women pursuing computer science degrees. The foundation would also provide training for insurance industry professionals on technology leadership and business continuity planning. But perhaps the most meaningful development was personal. During the chaos of the Wellington crisis, I'd reconnected with college friends, former colleagues, and family members who'd watched my career with pride and concern. My sister Emma flew in from Seattle to provide support during the legal proceedings, and we'd rebuilt our relationship that had suffered during my years of total dedication to work. Christian, I'm proud of how you handled this situation, but I'm even more proud that you're finally putting yourself first. You spent 15 years building something amazing for people who didn't appreciate your value. Now you're building something amazing for people who do. Patricia Wong, my neighbor, who'd provided emotional support throughout the crisis, helped me understand the broader implications of what had happened. Christian, you didn't just save your own career. You exposed a criminal enterprise that was destroying competent people across multiple industries. Amanda Wellington and her accomplices won't be able to hurt anyone else. 6 months later, I presented the keynote speech at the National Insurance Technology Conference in Chicago. The ballroom was packed with CIOs, system architects, and industry leaders who wanted to hear about building resilient operations and protecting institutional knowledge. Technical expertise isn't just a nice to have in our industry. It's the foundation that everything else depends on. When we allow politics to override competence, when we prioritize cost reduction over operational stability, when we assume that complex systems can be maintained by unqualified personnel, we put millions of people at risk. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Afterward, dozens of technology professionals approached me with their own stories of political manipulation and professional challenges. Many asked for advice about protecting themselves and their teams from similar situations. The key is documentation, professional networks, and the courage to stand up for standards. When someone tries to eliminate you for political reasons, make sure the consequences of that decision are visible and measurable. Competence has a way of proving itself when incompetence fails. A year later, Meridian Insurance had gained significant market share by demonstrating superior operational stability during hurricane season wildfire responses and the normal challenges of claims processing. Our system handled record claim volumes without interruption, while competitors struggled with outages and delays. Wellington Insurance had survived the regulatory investigation and Amanda's criminal trial, but their reputation never recovered. Robert Wellington retired in disgrace. Thomas Wellington faced civil lawsuits from shareholders, and the company eventually sold to a larger competitor at a fraction of its former value. Amanda Wellington was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for conspiracy and fraud charges. Jessica Taylor received 8 years after cooperating with prosecutors. Their criminal enterprise was dismantled, and several victims from previous companies received financial settlements. But my greatest satisfaction came from the mentorship program I'd established for young women entering technology careers. Every month, I met with college students and early career professionals, sharing lessons about technical excellence, professional courage, and the importance of standing up for competence in a world where politics often matters more than performance. Remember, your expertise has real value that can't be faked or replaced by connections. When someone tries to eliminate you for reasons that don't make sense, technically, they're usually covering up their own inadequacies. Document everything, build professional networks, and have the courage to walk away from situations where your competence isn't valued. As I sit in my office at Meridian Insurance, looking out at Nashville's skyline and knowing that millions of people are protected by systems I've built, I realize that Amanda Wellington did me a favor. She forced me to discover my own worth, fight for my professional standards, and build something even better than what I'd lost. Sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the greatest opportunity. Sometimes walking away from a situation that doesn't value your contribution leads to finding people who do. Sometimes the courage to stand up for yourself opens doors you never imagined possible. The system I built at Wellington Insurance was good, but what I'm building at Meridian is extraordinary. And this time, I'm doing it with people who understand that competence matters more than politics, that expertise can't be replaced by enthusiasm, and that protecting the people who keep essential systems running is the foundation of sustainable business success. I learned that 15 years of perfect performance means nothing if you don't have the courage to defend your professional standards. But I also learned that when you do have that courage, when you're willing to walk away from people who don't value your contributions, you often find better opportunities with people who do. Have you ever had to choose between accepting unfair treatment and standing up for what you knew was right, even when the consequences seemed terrifying? How did you find the courage to fight back when everything seemed stacked against you? I'd love to hear your stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it inspires you to value your own expertise. Stand up for professional standards and remember that your contributions have worth that can't be diminished by other people's politics or insecurities. Please like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming workplace challenges and share your own experiences in the comments below. Until next time, remember that competence and courage are the foundation of everything worthwhile.